Hi, and welcome to episode 22 of the Give Me a Crown Knitting, Spinning and Bits and Pieces podcast. My name's Nina, also known as Give Me a Crown across the internet, and today is Monday the 11th of January 2016, so it seems like I've managed to get myself back on track. There's a bit of routine happening again after the holidays, which is good. Don't mind being spontaneous, but I also like a bit of routine now and then. So thank you for tuning in. It's lovely to get to spend a bit of time with you. I've managed to do quite a bit of crafting since I last podcasted. So I've got some spinning and some knitting to show you this week. And I've also got the 2016 Yarn Goals giveaway, which was running in the Give Me a Crown Ravelry group. So I think I'll start with that and say thank you to the 34 people who took part in the giveaway. It was fun to have a read through all of your knitting and spinning and various yarn goals. It definitely inspired me, so hopefully later on in the year we'll be able to do some knit-alongs that will help to help you achieve your goals. So the first prize is this wonderful skein of yarn. So this was kindly donated by Circus Tonic Handmade, which is a Sydney-based yarn dyer, and this is the Ravelry sock fingering, 80% Australian superwash merino, 20% nylon, 374 meters in 100 grams in the Spangled Drongo colorway. And it's a lovely soft yarn that I imagine could work well in a shawl or in some socks or a hat, all sorts of things. So it's definitely a lovely skein of yarn. And this is just the postcard that Hannah sent me when she sent this skein to me. So thank you, Hannah, for the kind donation. And there were 34 posts or entries, because there was 36 posts in the thread, but the first and the last one were mine. So I'll do a drawing from 2 to 35. Yes, that's right. Okay, well, hopefully this works. Random number between 2 and 35.
7.
So the first winner is number 7. I'll just check who that is. And post number 7 is Cyberfrog. I think that's how you pronounce her name. It's Gail, who happens to be in Sydney. So it's Cyberfrog. I really don't know how to pronounce it. I hope that's right. And Gail's been a very active member of the group, so congratulations, Gail. And she's got a few different goals, including some alpaca that she's ordered from Adagio Yarn Mill. They're doing a Kickstarter program. I had a bit of a look at their website, but I haven't looked at the Kickstarter program yet. And I think they were out near Orange. I hope I'm not getting them confused with somebody else, but they were definitely a company that I'm interested in checking out in the future. She's also got some Miss Click Clack that she wants to work on a sweater with, and she's also keen to try a colourwork project, and she's completing her colour indulgent rug. So that's fantastic to see. And get in touch with me, Gail, and I think I might actually have your address from when you ordered from my Etsy shop, but just get in touch and confirm that the address is still correct. Now the second prize is this set of stitch markers. So this was a custom order that I placed with Chatham Designs, so that I could get the stitch markers with the Give Me a Crown logo colours. So there's some stitch markers and also a progress keeper. And I was having a look at the Chatham Designs Etsy shop the other day, and I noticed that that the woman behind it has actually renamed it, so it's now called Calico Miss on Etsy. So she still has all her wonderful stitch markers, and definitely worth checking out if you're looking for some stitch markers. So this second prize, I will draw again from 2 to 35. Random number between 2 and 35.
It's 12.
Okay, so post number 12 is Teresa, who is Quiet Zone from Alabama. So this is Teresa's picture, and Teresa's goal was to be wise in her selection of yarn and patterns so that a higher percentage of finished products are part of her regular wardrobe. So congratulations, Teresa. If you could get in touch with me and give me your address, then I will send out your stitch markers, and I'll also pop in some other little goodies for both of the winners in their prize packs. So thanks again for everyone who took part. I love giving things away, and I'm sure that we'll have some more giveaways in the near future. And we might also have a knit along at some point soon. If you want to keep the group in up to date with some of your goals, and feel free to post in the Everyday Chatter thread. I've closed off the 2016 Yarn Goals thread, but the Everyday Chatter thread is a nice little spot for sharing various projects that you're working on in the group. So on to I have a finished object. I think it feels like a while since I've actually finished something, but maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, I showed this fibre off in one of the recent episodes. So this was some Heavenly Wools fibre, New Zealand 20 micron merino wool in the Empress of India colourway, and I wanted to try my first fractal spin. So the fractal spin is one where you have a braid of fibre, you split it in half, you spin one half from end to end, and then the other half you split off into a few more portions, and then you spin those end to end after each other. So the idea is that you get one ply which has got the whole of the braid, all the colours sort of going through, and then the other one is a more rapid colour change. I think it possibly works better with fibres that have got a lot more colours in them. Mine only had a gradient sort of going from pink to purple, but I'm quite happy with the result. So this was the first of the skeins, so it's got more of the pink in it with some of the purple. Then this is the second skein, so this one has more of the purple, and then I ended up with this much left over on one of the bobbins, so I just spun it up by itself. So it's got a lot more of the blue. No, it's got a bit of everything in it. So I guess this is how it would have turned out if I'd have split the entire braid into 4, but I ended up splitting half, and then in the other half I did 6 strips. Overall, I'm happy. I think once I ball this up and combine these two so that the progression goes through, it'll be much more obvious that it's a fractal spun yarn, and it should knit up quite nicely. So I did this with a short forward draw on my wheel, and this is 15 grams, which is a fair amount to be left over with. And when I had split the fibre in too. Originally, one of them had 4 grams more than the other, and I thought, oh, 4 grams doesn't matter too much. But my yarn consistency must have been really, really out of whack with the second part of the fibre in order to end up with 15 grams left over. Because out of 100 grams, that's like 15%. But it's a mini, and I'm actually thinking about adding this into my blanket. It's sort of a it's probably a sport weight yarn, so I think it should still go okay into my sock yarn blanket. But that's my little spin. I ended up with 134 meters or 148 yards in that skein, 117 meters or 130 yards in that one, and 55 meters or 61 yards in that. So altogether 306 meters or 339 yards. So yeah, I think that's a sport weight, I would say, or closer to a sport weight than a fingering weight anyway. So that's my fun little spin. I would definitely try the fractal spinning again, but I would probably weigh my fibre a bit better, try to be more consistent with my singles, and then I'd love to use a fibre braid that has a lot more colour changes in it, so at least maybe 5 colours within 100 grams. I think would make it a bit more of an exciting spin, but I think this yarn is going to work really nicely in a project because it doesn't have that many colours in it. So on to works in progress. There's actually been a fair bit of work in progress. I'm a bit of a sucker for watching the tennis, and in January there's a lot of Australian tennis on the TV. I've only got free to wear, so I think the only other tournament that I tend to watch is Wimbledon, because we get that on free to wear as well. But January is generally tennis month, and I'm actually thinking about going to the APIA International here in Sydney that's running this week, just to check out the tennis, but the weather's looking a little bit crazy, so not entirely sure. I went a couple of years ago and it was a lot of fun, but it was also incredibly hot, so we'll see. But I'm getting all tongue-tied. With the works in progress, I haven't been working on my craftfulness socks this week because I'm saving them up in case I do have to pop out of town. But I've done a lot of progress on my Geisler cardigan. So this cardigan, I'm not sure if I think I have shown you this picture. So this is what it will look like, and I am working through the body at the moment. I'm working this with Bendigo Woolen Mills luxury base in the slate and I think it's slate and cream colorways, and this is very hard to show, but this is where I'm up to. So I think last time that I showed this, I had split for no, I think I'd finished off the sleeves and joined up for the body, and so I've just been working some waist decreases. I think I mentioned that I was thinking about whether or not I would put the waist decreases at 1/4 of the way in from the front and 1/3 of the way on the back, which is how I've done a couple of pullovers, and I like the fit of those. I decided to just stick with the pattern and put them on the sides, and it seems to be fitting well, so I'm not concerned about that, and I thought I'll just do the pattern as it's written and I don't have to think about it too much. It's fitting nicely, and it is a lots and lots of knitting and purling and knitting and purling, but it's going to be a great cardigan to wear once it gets a bit cooler here. I'm now about to do a few more rows and then start the increases going down to the hem, and I think I will need to just do a few more increases. My hips are probably bigger than what the pattern calls for, so I'll do some measurements and just see whether I need to adjust that, just to make sure that there's a few more stitches so that it's not too tight on me. But I'm actually really looking forward to getting onto the sleeves so that I can just knit in the round, do some mindless knitting, and I think maybe 2 or 3 more weeks, and probably 3 more weeks, and I should be finished with that. So it's going well, and I like the pattern. It's fairly straightforward, but if I mention knitting a 4-ply cardigan at any time in 2016, just remind me that it's a lot of purling. A 4-ply pullover, I don't mind, but yeah, it's a lot of purling. I have also added a few squares to my sock yarn blanket. So one of the squares that I've added is the slate colour from my cardigan. Thought I'd add that in there. I've also added one square, this purple one, that way, and this is from a mini sent to me by Hannah from the Rosehip Island Etsy shop and the Rosehip Knits podcast, and I really like the colours in there. They might not come up too well on screen, but they're sort of beautiful purples with just little hints of sort of darker greys and blacks, and then whiter patches, and I think that would be absolutely beautiful in a shawl or a pair of socks. But yeah, I really like that colour. For some reason I seem to be very much into purples and blues at the moment, and I'm not too sure why, but you'll see another one shortly. And this mini was sent to me by Celine from France, Cersibel's Bee, and she's also a designer on Etsy, on Ravelry, and that's one of the minis that she sent me in a swap package, and I really like that one. I can't remember, I think it might have been an opal yarn, but it's just nice and subtle and kind of has a vintagey feel to me somehow. Maybe because of the cream in the lighter stripe, but it's beautiful. So that's my sock yarn blanket, and I have been weaving in some ends after my show and tell last week. So I've been weaving in these. I leave some little tiny pieces in there, just so that when I finish the blanket I'll give it a soak and then I'll snip those off. It's just what I tend to do. So the whole of the top row has had its ends woven in whenever there's four squares joined. I've sort of taken a few evenings where I've just decided to spend half an hour weaving in a bunch of them, so I've still got a lot of weaving in to go, but at least I'm getting some of them done. And I've got a new project. So one of my 2016 yarn goals was to try out brioche knitting, and I've never touched brioche in my life. I've just seen photographs and I've seen people in podcasts showing off their brioche and a lot of people talking about brioche, and I've just been fascinated by the colour combinations that can be made with brioche. So I had a look around for some patterns. I thought that I could do a beanie in brioche, and there was a free pattern from Pearl Soho, and it was just a little bit plain. A few people in their projects had commented on the decreases of the crown, that they weren't entirely happy with them. So I decided to skip on that one, and there was a free Stephen West brioche beanie, but it looked a little bit, I guess it didn't give me enough instruction on what I was actually meant to be doing, so I downloaded it and had a look, but I passed on that one as well. And then I had a look at a few of the paid patterns, and I decided to choose the Pop Fizzle beanie. So it looks like this. Pop Fizzle by Lesley Anne Robinson, and it has a very pretty crown decrease on the top. It's possibly a little bit slouchier than what I would, sort of slouchier with some structure, if that makes sense. That it sort of looks like it stands up a bit at the back, which isn't necessarily what I'd wear. I like my slouchy beanies to sort of flop. But I had seen this pattern on the Stockinette Zombies podcast a while ago, and I was having a read through some of the project notes, and people seem to be saying that it's a good pattern. So I bought that on Ravelry, and I kind of thought that it would have a bit more instruction about how to do some of the brioche stitches, just based on the project notes from other people, and it doesn't, but it does actually, it points you off towards places where you can learn the things that you need to do. It does have some of the more specific stitches for the pattern, sort of photographs of how to do them, but just for the basics it refers you off to other places, which is fine. I managed to figure it out, and so for this project it calls for, it has different weights of yarn that you can use, and I was thinking about doing the least slouchy version, so it would have required I think it was sport weight yarn and then a fingering weight yarn held double, but I don't have that much sport weight yarn. It's a bit hard to find in Australia, and I really wanted to use some of my stash, and so I looked at my DK weight yarns, and I couldn't find anything with enough contrast, so I've actually gone with a 10-ply yarn. So I think this is a Aran weight yarn from Bendigo Wool and Mills. It's in their luxury base in the navy blue, so it's 100% wool, and I've knit a cardigan out of this this weight yarn before, and when it called for, I think, a sport weight, so it seems to work well. So that is one of my colours, and then my other yarn, which is tangled at the moment, is this wonderful yarn. So this is one that I ordered recently from Hannah from the Rosehip Island Etsy shop, and that's her card. So this is a fingering superwash wool, Australian Merino cross, in the flower bed colourway, and there's 360 metres for 100 grams. So this, I thought that this would be a good yarn because, well, this is the yarn that I was trying to match some DK weight yarn with, and I only had sort of greys and things, and I thought that it wouldn't pop enough. Whereas these two together, I think that the blue plays off the sort of purpley tones in this Rosehip Island yarn, and I thought that it's not too wild, but it should make, because I want to wear it, and I don't know if I would wear a very, very wild coloured hat like the one in the picture of the pattern. I guess I possibly wouldn't wear something like that, but I think I would wear this. And also this was a merino wool, so together they're both merino wools, or I think they are. I think the Bendigo Wool and Mills is merino. I might be wrong, but at least they're both wool. They don't have any nylon in them, so they should keep my head nice and warm in winter. And I don't tend to have a sensitive head. So I think it should be okay. I think I've made a few beanies in the past that have kind of itched a little bit, but I don't think I'm going to have that problem with this at all. So this is what I'm up to. So this is a little bit hard to show. So I'm knitting this on cubics, and I started off knitting magic loop on 4mm needles, but my longer cables are on my cardigan, so the length of the needle wasn't quite right, and after I'd knit a few rows I realised that it was all going a bit pear-shaped, so I ripped back and started again, and I picked these cubics. Even though they're 3.5mm and the pattern calls for 4mm, I thought that it should still work out alright, and it's going fine. The only thing is that it feels a little bit dangerous because I've got so much going on. I'm learning a new thing, and I'm just worried about dropping some stitches off the needles, but it hasn't happened yet. So with this pattern, there's some basic brioche going along there, and then it starts off into some increases and decreases to create a pretty pattern. It's a really nice squishy texture, and I guess I've heard people say that before, but there's some thickness to it because of the two yarns that are going on in there, and it will definitely be a warm beanie. And I don't know, I can't really flip this over, but brioche is also reversible, so the inside looks really pretty as well, and I think that I'm actually going to end up wearing it with the inside out, or I'll wear it both ways, I guess. But there's that side and then that side. But I like seeing some of the little flecks of colour in the flower bed yarn. So yeah, it's going well. I'm pretty impressed with myself for getting this far, and feeling like I'm on top of it and not feeling like it's about to be frogged. I'm a little bit worried that it's going to be just a smidgen large for my head, but it seems to be sort of, I think it might be alright. It's hard to measure at this stage, and I think I'll have to put a cable onto it just to measure it once I get a little bit further in. And I guess if you're looking at starting brioche, one thing I would suggest is don't use doubled up fingering weight yarn. So I love the way that this is looking, and I think it's a perfect combination of yarns, but I probably should have done my first brioche project with just 2 strands of yarn rather than having 3, because it gets a bit confusing when you're starting off to have so many different yarns all over the place, and it would have been easier with just two strands rather than 3. Another thing, if you're starting out with brioche, is it might be a good idea to just do a flat piece first rather than trying to tackle brioche in the round. I think if I'd have just done a small swatch going backwards and forwards, I would have got the hang of the stitches and understood what I'm actually looking at, because for the first few rows or first few rounds it looks like a complete muddle and mess. It's only once you get into sort of a little bit further along that you can actually see a pattern starting to form. But I guess even if you didn't do a flat swatch, because then you have to be thinking about knitting backwards and forwards and the differences that creates, but even if you had a fixed circular that was the correct size, then that would at least be better than trying to use DPNs, because there are a lot of yarn overs. The yarn overs get created at the join of the needles, so it sort of, at first I had a few, I'd get to the end of a needle and be staring at my stitch going, what have I done wrong? Because it just didn't look right. I knew that there was something wrong, but it was actually just that I'd been doing the yarn overs on the next needle rather than the previous one. And anyway, it's a bit like learning a brand new language. The different stitch, the different legends or whatever for the stitches, it takes a bit of getting used to. I've actually printed off the legend onto a piece of paper while I'm looking at the pattern on my iPad, just so that I don't have to keep swiping backwards and forwards on the iPad to figure out what I'm doing. But having said that, once I've done a stitch a few times, it seems to be sticking. So as with anything, you just have to try it again, and then trust that you'll figure it out. Overall, it's a lot like knitting, just normal everyday knitting. It's just that you do one round with one colour and then another round with the other colour, and you treat this sort of the stitches have yarn overs over them, so you treat them as one stitch when there's actually sort of a yarn over and a stitch. And there are lots of videos out there. I only looked at the ones that were referred to in the pattern, so I probably should have done a bit more research as well before I launched into a project, but it's working. So that's my little brioche project, and it's been a really fun distraction from my cardigan, and then it doesn't make it makes my cardigan feel easier once I actually hop back onto it. So that's that. For acquisitions this week, it's just been that the Pop Fizzle pattern, and I don't think there's much else. Thank you for watching, and feel free to come and join in the Ravelry group and say hello. There's the Everyday Chatter thread for just blather, but if you have any questions or comments or feedback on the episode, then there'll be an episode thread in the group as well. If there's anything in particular that you'd like me to talk about, I know that there are people viewing from all over the world, so sometimes I might be referring to Australian things or Finnish things that maybe I could be explaining things better, or maybe you want to know something about me. Just let me know in the group. And I hope you're well. Congratulations again to Gail and Teresa for their for winning the 2016 Yarn Girls giveaway. And I think it's time for some more coffee. So on that note, I'll see you soon.